What's up guys, Trevor Hunter here at Dirt Bike Tests, and today we are wrapping up our 2023 KX450X long-term test bike. So we've had this bike for just over a year now, put right around 90 hours on this bike, and so we kind of want to give you an update on kind of the parts, some of the parts we used that we liked, and kind of a durability report as well, because I know we get a lot of questions on kind of just how durable these Kawasaki's are, and we were quite impressed with what little maintenance we had to do with these. So I guess to start with the durability side, Kawasaki gave us this bike last September, October, so we've had it just over a year now, and the maintenance has been very minimal. We rode it for about 35 hours, and then Kawasaki ended up taking the bike back. It needed a couple things from a crash, and so they kind of took the bike out. They put a new top end in, checked the valves were in spec, but they put a new top end in just to be safe. And that was right at the 35-hour mark, and today we are sitting about 89.5 hours. The bottom end is still original, still working really good. Top end has 55-ish hours on it, so it's pretty good on that side. And yeah, valves feel good. Motor feels really tight still. It's definitely yeah, it runs really strong. Really no issues to report there. And like I said, the only maintenance we've done is we bleed the clutch every 25 to 30 hours. Since it is a hydraulic clutch, and we do oil changes every maybe 5 to 6 hours, oil filter every other oil change, and air filter just about every ride. Typically when we ride it, it does need an air filter. It gets pretty dirty, so pretty much every ride gets a new air filter. But other than that, the maintenance has been very minimal. I think our clutches, we go about 35 hours on each as well. So when Kawasaki took the bike back originally, they put a new clutch in, just new plates and fibers. And then at around the 70 to 75 hour mark is when we put another new clutch in. And it's been running strong ever since then. So durability, everything's been good. Kind of just the normal stuff, like the Kawasaki plastic that comes stock is fairly brittle. So we kind of replaced that with a Cherubies plastic. It's a little tougher, fits really nice and everything, and just a little more durable than that stock Kawasaki plastic we found. Chain guide and slider, we replaced that pretty early on with Team Design Works kit, and that's been running strong ever since. Chain and sprockets, we replaced that, did the gearing and stuff like that, so we kind of replaced the chain and sprockets fairly early. But really, aside from that, this bike has been very bulletproof. Brake pads are good. We haven't broken the exhaust tab off the subframe like a lot of people say they have. We've been running the stock exhaust and mainly running aftermarket exhaust, but that has been rubber mounted. And then we also torqued the muffler bolts as well, which I think could help that scenario. We're not over tightening it and putting a little more stress on than it needs to be. So we do torque the muffler bolts, and we've had zero issues with that. Yeah, everything just feels pretty good on this bike still for having 90 plus hours on this bike, and the very little maintenance that we've done. So I say with the one thing that we've kind of come across now is like kind of the swing arm pivot, like the shock. One of the shock bearings is getting a little worn out, so there's a little bit of play in that swing arm when you lift up and down on the rear wheel. But other than that, I mean, that's really the only item of concern that we have with this bike as we're giving it back to Kawasaki. Is just kind of that swing arm pivot, kind of something in the linkage bearings there is a little worn out, and there's a little bit of play in that rear end. But aside from that, this bike has been really good to us. So on the durability side, we're really happy to report that this Kawasaki is right up there with a lot of the best of them. You know, it might be 1% off, maybe the best of the best, but it's more than I wouldn't be scared to own a Kawasaki based on what we've had with this bike in the last year. So now going on to some of the parts that we've tried running. We've gone through an assortment of different parts, mainly chassis parts. The motor on this bike is pretty good stock. We ran Precision Concepts tuned, just stock ECU. They reflashed the ECU, and that smoothed out the initial hit of the power and kind of made it a little broader and smoother. It pulls really good from top to bottom, and the bike revs really good for a 450. And this chassis responds well to that too. So that Precision Concepts ECU remap worked really well on this bike. And then we also ran a Pro Circuit stainless steel T6 system, and that very similar to the Precision Concepts ECU mapping, just smoothened out the power even more so, and really made it more of a mid to top end power character, which I kind of liked on this bike. It made it really fun to ride. You had to ride a little more aggressive than maybe I normally would on 450, but I think this chassis responded well and made it really fun to ride this bike, especially more the Grand Prix kind of setting that we were riding and racing this bike in a lot. For a true off-road bike, it might not be quite as inducive to that, but for what we were doing with it with the Grand Prix and stuff, we really like that Pro Circuit system with Certain Concepts ECU. Some of the other big key parts that we tested tested lots of some triple clamp stuff, and so kind of just give you the basic rundown. We have a more in-depth report on dirtbiketest.com you can read, but we started with the stock triple clamps, and those felt pretty good, but we were missing some stuff, so we went to a GPR stabilizer with their top triple clamp, and that made a huge difference. The biggest thing is it added enough rigidity to where the bike actually really cornered really good now, whereas the stock triple clamps, the front end was pretty vague through the corners, and it was just tough to really trust the front end through some of the corners. And so putting that GPR stabilizer, the upper triple clamp, and leaving the stock lower had a really good blend of comfort and performance, where it turned really good, but also had enough comfort to where you're not feeling a lot of feedback and rigidity through the front end. So that was the end setup that we ended up liking the best and ran with the most. We also tried some X-Trib triple clamps, and that really helped the bike corner, but it added a lot of rigidity to the front end. And for an off-road bike, if it beat us up too much, a little too harsh, and just too much was felt through the front end, and we ended up taking those off. It was just too much rigidity for an off-road bike, we felt. For a motocross track, it wasn't all that bad, especially if the track was smoother. But even like Lund Helen late on a Thursday or something, it was just a little too rigid for us and kind of made the bike feel harsh, and it was a little tougher to ride. Another option we tried was the Ride Engineering triple clamp, which has a little less offset. I think it's 1 millimeter steeper. And what we liked and didn't like about that is we liked the flux characteristics of this clamps a lot. It kind of softened up that feel and had a really good feel through the front end, and you could also corner really well. It's like on a motocross track, we really like that. But we get into some of the off-road terrain, especially like sand and kind of faster terrain. The front end just felt like it's a little too close and kind of like underneath you a little bit, and it made for a little unstable, or not unstable, but little less predictable front end, especially kind of on braking and stuff. And so we ended up taking those clamps off, mainly just for the off-road riding that we were doing. If we were just sticking to the motocross track, I think that probably would have been our best option. But for the off-road and stuff that we're doing here on the West Coast, we felt like we missed that little slacker head angle and a little more stability that we got out of the stock offset triple clamp. Other than that, this bike was left kind of relatively stock. Gearing, we stuck with a 1350 gearing for our GP stuff. If we ventured to the desert, we do 1347 to get that top speed, but for the most part, we just stuck with 1350. And like mountain single track and stuff, we do up to like 1351 to 1352, depending on how tight it is. That helped us chug the bike a little better and kind of not run out of gear and not have to use the clutch so much. TCS Power Sports worked well with the suspension. We got this thing working really good. So the stock suspension on this bike was very soft. So TCS, they stiffened us up and got it to a much better off-road race bike setting that we really liked and everyone felt comfortable with. Other than that, those were the big main takeaways from this bike. It's just the durability report, and then those were some of the big performance parts that we did test. We also ran the Ride Engineering link arm, which lowered the shock a little bit, or lowered the rear end a little bit, which we really liked that as well. So basically, yeah, that was kind of the big takeaway is those few parts, and then just the durability report is very positive on this bike. Like I said, after having this bike for a year now, I wouldn't be scared to own one of these. I know we had a couple of our test riders who partaked in our shootout stuff. They actually went out and bought Kawasaki's on their own just because of how well this bike performed. And I think the durability side for them as well will be just as good, if not better, that we had for us. So overall, KX450X is a great bike. We really enjoyed our time on it in a variety of conditions that we rode it. And yeah, we're looking forward to getting more time on the new 24 and seeing what that new chassis and everything is all about. Till then, we'll see you out on the trail.
If you liked what you saw in this video, come check us out over at dirtbiketest.com on the webs. We have bike tests, product tests, a lot of fresh dirt, and you can even support us by clicking through our links. Hopefully we'll see you out in the trail.